I was picking December, and we were already recording one in December because we're doing this one because we're making up for November right now.
Yeah, so we got to do
I
two this
forgot
month.
to
Yeah.
pick. I forgot to pick the second one.
Matt, you had these scheduled like a year in advance. What do you mean you forgot?
What's up? Somebody's at my house.
What's up? Oh, someone's at your house? It's like 10 o'clock when we're recording this. What do you mean? Oh.
Okay, this is weird. Someone just handed this to me.
What's inside, Matt? I mean, do you want to open it here? We can call.
Yeah, I know.
No.
I mean, let's see what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a note inside. It says, "Don't forget the time I fought those green bastards." Signed, SC. I don't know what that means.
See.
There's a button. I'm gonna press it.
Oh, are you sure you want to press it, Matt?
Yes, I have to press it. I'm going to press it.
Matt, why do you have to press it?
Because, do you know the first rule of Button Pressers Club?
Don't talk about Button Pressers Club?
No, that's a different club.
Okay.
The first rule of Button Pressers Club is you must always press the button. It happened again.
Why am I wearing Christmas colors, Matt? What? Why does this happen every December?
It's a Framewreck miracle.
What a story, Mark.
Hello, everyone. Ho, 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 hello, and welcome to our Framewreck Christmas episode, holiday episode, our two-parter, because the last episode took me so long to edit that it dropped the same week as Christmas. So this is like a twofer you're getting this week, and a kind of a little cliffhanger resolved. Welcome, everyone, to Framewreck. I am Dylan Randazzo, one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined by CLAUS, aka Matt Chapmond, my great co-host, where we talk about bad movies, but not just bad movies that are bad, but bad movies that are good. And one of those bad movies that is very good because it's bad, or maybe it's good on its own, we'll talk about it, is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, which I saw for the first time in 3rd grade, and we'll get into it. But Matt,
nice.
How are you doing? Happy holidays, and are you excited to be talking about Santa Claus and some Martians and some boxes that are painted silver?
Happy holidays, and yes, I'm super excited. I love this movie. I did not see it in the 3rd grade. I was an adult when I saw it, but I've seen it several times since then, and I just really love this movie, and it made me very happy because when I was picking, what movies we were doing, I usually pick them a few months in advance, and so like I had picked this for our Christmas episode, and so I was so excited when Kevin Bacon was watching this movie in Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday special. And I was like, that's what we're doing for December. I was so excited.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. As I said, 3rd grade, we had these things called clusters. So it was like almost like electives that we would take, but they were like maybe 40 minutes, and it was only like once a week, and it was like a special little thing that you took on your Friday. You did a little cluster, and my cluster I took was the film cluster, obviously, and the teacher who taught it, because of how the curriculum worked out for the semester or quarter or whatever, we only had time to watch 3 movies, and they all were like hour and a half or shorter, across the like 5 or 6 week span. So we watched Disney's Dumbo, which was, fine. It's not my favorite. We watched the original Errol Flynn, The Adventures of Robin Hood, and we watched Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. And it was kind of like her way of saying, like, let's go to kids' films and animation. Let's go like swashbuckling adventure classic films, Technicolor, and then let's go for like bad films. And I was like, I love how like that's the 3 you settled on: animation, classic Technicolor too, not black and white, and then bad films. So bad it's good, because she advertised it as the worst film ever made, because I believe at the time The Room had come out, but it had not been The Room that we all know. So like, there were very few films that were like considered the best of all time. And because this was kid friendly, we're 3rd grade, so this was like a perfect fit. But I remember watching it and hating it because I was a kid and I was told to hate it because it was going to be bad. But then when I got older, I was like, no, but like this is so good it's bad that like I can appreciate it now, and we'll get into it. But
what year was that? What year were you in the 3rd grade?
3rd grade. I mean, how old are you in 3rd grade? Like, I guess maybe like 8, 9.
Yeah, you're around 8.
Yeah, it's like 2006, 2007 ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we saw this for the first time around the same time.
That's funny. Maybe like maybe we had the same DVD rented or something like that. Maybe it ended up like getting shipped across to New Jersey where I was a third
Yeah.
grader. I don't know. But this totally conquered the lists of Christmas movies that are so bad it's good because it's a short list. I feel like even the
Yeah.
bad Christmas movies people have nostalgia for, like they
Mhm.
find merit, like genuine merits in them. But there are
Mhm.
rarely Christmas movies that are just like flat out like awful but also
Right.
good. Like the awful Christmas movies are usually just awful.
Right.
But there's something for everyone and
A
everything.
lot of the bad Christmas movies are not the right kind of bad.
Mhm.
And the ones and the rest are like you said, like a movie that we may talk about on this show some year that I think is just a really bad movie, but I love it is Jingle All the Way. But
Mm,
Chad, one of the co-hosts on the Dyl Pickle Movie Network, loves that movie. He considers it an
yeah,
actually good movie,
there
and
you go.
so yeah, Chris, holiday movies are hard because there's not a lot that like universally we
Right.
agree are bad movies.
I mean, we just had a draft day where half of the panel said, "Yeah, Polar Express sucks," and the other half was like, "No, it's like the best." So like that
Right.
just goes to show it's generational. And I'm kind of in the camp of like I have nostalgia for it, but it's creepy as hell. So it's all about nostalgia, and I think this is so interesting because like I don't think anyone in our generation has nostalgia for this because this did come out like before all of us,
Right.
which makes it a little bit more interesting because it's kind of got a classic vibe to it. It's like around the same time that Star Trek was coming out, so it's kind of got like a if Star Trek is already like a lower tier budget in terms of budget like Star Wars, then this is like the lower budget Star Trek. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of like the attempt at sci-fi, the design, which I'm sure we'll get into, but because the story is very straightforward, and we'll get into it, but I think it's all the little details and nuances that make it so memorable. Because I had a blast with it. Spoiler, I had a
Oh,
blast.
oh yeah. I had a blast as well, obviously. But it's interesting that you mentioned like the technical and when it came out because in researching it for this show, I found out a lot of stuff I didn't know about it.
Hmm,
Um, and it actually breaks a lot of ground, and we'll go into that a little bit. Some of
hmm.
it is not. Some of the ground it breaks is just stuff I noticed, but some of it is like it sets it did some things first, and we'll
Like
get into that.
trendsetter. So it's like the
Yeah.
Citizen Kane of the '70s, I guess. Right? Because it came out in the '70s. What year did it come out, Matt?
It came out in, I believe, 1964. Yes,
Oh,
64.
64. Oh, so it's a
Yes.
decade earlier than I thought it was. I was put it
Yeah.
in the early '70s. So yeah, like again, it's classic. It's classic. Maybe not your
Well,
It's a Wonderful Life, but it's a classic Christmas movie for sure.
well, let's get uh, some of the production notes out of the way here for this movie. It was written and produced by Paul L. Jacobson. It was
Right.
based on a story by Glenville Meredith, and it was directed by Nicholas Webster. Um, it came to be the film was the idea of producer Paul Jacobson, who worked in video production and wanted to move into features. He hired writer Glenville Meredith to develop the idea. Nicholas directed, made through his own Jailer Productions. Uh, Jacobson called it a Yuletide science fiction fantasy and said he made it because of the perceived gap in the market, which we came to realize why there is a gap in the market because it's not a good it's not a good concept.
Mm,
Um, except for he said except for the Disneys, there's very few film houses that children recognize as their own.
mm,
So children's sci-fi, holiday sci-fi is the market he was trying to corner, and
uh-huh.
in a way, he did. Um, uh, but
Right.
um, so this is where we get to the first for the first like groundbreaking thing that it did.
Mm.
Um, this movie marks the first appearance of Mrs. Claus on screen, uh,
Wow.
because
Whoa.
it came out 3 weeks before Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Wow. So do you think they like were working the studios were working by each other and were like, "Oh, we're going to introduce Miss Claus." Like was she a thing in like literature? Was she already like a known concept or did this create the idea of Mrs. Claus and then it just happened that Rudolph a few months later happened to also come up with the idea of Santa must be married? Like do you know anything about that or
I
is that
don't
just a
know anything
puzzling
about
question
that.
I wonder?
I have
I'm going
to
to look it up.
imagine. I have to imagine that Mrs. Claus exists in lore somewhere, but she was woefully overlooked d- during the birth of cinema, it seems,
Yes.
until
So she was,
1964.
yeah, she was first mentioned in a short story called "A Christmas Legend" in 1849 by James Reese,
Okay.
a Philadelphia-born Christian missionary. So like she was introduced as a character in literature, but you're right, in popular media, she was not shown in anything until then. And
Yeah.
then obviously since then has been shown in a lot of stuff.
Right.
That's pretty amazing. That's really amazing. The first motion picture to depict Mrs. Claus, 1964's Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Doris Rich. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Yep,
Doris
and then
Rich.
goes
Yes.
on, yeah, Santa Claus is coming to town, Year Without Santa Claus, The Night They Saved Christmas, Santa Claus the movie, Nightmare Before Christmas, and then we get into like the modern, with everything with Santa Claus 2, Goldie Hawn's, Fred Claus, all that.
You can't really do Santa anymore without Mrs. Claus. She's a staple. This was the first one that did it. So
Wow.
I think that's very interesting.
And they
Um,
probably, because of that, kind of like gave us the vibe of what she might have looked like. Like, is she gonna look kind of like Santa, like in that vibe, or is she gonna be totally different? Like, what is the
mhm.
vibe of Miss Claus? Like, this kind of sets that vibe, which is kind of cool.
Right. Yes, exactly. And she's in it very little, but I love the like the spunkiness that
Hmm.
Doris Rich gives her. The I don't know, there's just something about her and her brief
Hmm.
screen appearance that I
Yeah.
really enjoy
And
personally.
I know we're still in like production notes, but I think this is worth mentioning now that like I think the biggest strength of the film is that it's just, and you kind of alluded to this on draft day, it's a really good Santa. Like this is a
Yeah.
good Santa performance. John Call as Santa Claus, and yes, the material schlocky, the design is poor, but like I think his portrayal of Santa is very honest. It's just the jolly Santa Claus. It's like as classic as you get without like the little nooks and crannies and tricks and twists of like Santa that we've seen in other things, even like Miracle on 34th Street. It's like there's that mystery of, is it a real guy? Is it Santa? You know, and like Elf,
Right.
he's a little bit more like hard edge. Here, just like as clean cut Santa Claus as you get. And I kind of like that. It's like a very simple performance. And I think that like adds a lot to the movie and kind of grounds it at times when it needs it.
Yes, I agree. Actually, let's just get into that. We're gonna start here with
Yeah.
Santa and the North Pole,
Mm.
because I think I agree. I think it's the strongest part of this movie. There's um, the thing that this movie does, and we talk about how it's a requirement for a bad movie that a bad movie has to be
Unaware.
yeah, it has to be coming by it honestly. It has to be
Hmm.
trying to do a good thing.
Yeah,
Um,
unaware that it's bad. Yeah, like
yeah,
it's not trying to be schlocky, like
right.
something like a Shyamalan, you know.
Right. It's earnest. A bad movie comes out of earnestness, and this movie is so freaking earnest. I think it's absolutely wholesomely trying to make a holiday classic. Like it's trying to make a movie uh about Christmas, and Santa is trying to do it right.
Hmm.
And all of the North Pole stuff, or most of the North Pole stuff, is pretty great s- North Pole cinema. Like it's
Yeah,
John Call. He's like a Coca Cola Santa. Like he's straight out off the Coca Cola
yeah,
bottle. Like
and that
Santa.
could be a criticism from some, is that it's like a little bit one note, bland, plain, whatever. But like, no, I think that adds to the charm, and I also think, you know, like you said, it's a family film, and it gets those elements right. Like I
Yeah.
think if you, the script is always going to be kind of bad, the design's always going to be like, but like at its heart, like it gets the tone right. I think across the whole film in terms of like being primarily a schlocky sci-fi family film. Like I think
Right.
it's consistent in that way, where it like is at least aware of what the market is, I guess, and while it's a little unaware of some of the execution, how it's going about it. Like I think they're always still consistently successful in that regard.
Right. Yeah. And the not only Santa and Mrs. Claus, the elves are fantastic. The whole workshop. I do think it's funny that the movie starts with a reporter being invited to the North Pole to interview Santa, which
Mm.
is just such an interesting concept that Santa is just known.
Yeah, and
It's just so well known.
I must say, the reporters that we see in the early stuff, like on the commercials or on the TV and stuff, like that is like I think a lot of people dock it for that dialogue, but like
Yeah.
as a dad joke connoisseur, I ate this shit up. I was like laughing at every joke, and I'm like, wait, I'm not supposed to be laughing because this is the stuff that people find bad. But like it's bad, but like I also find enjoyment in the dad jokes of like the little and not just the dad jokes if you just deliver them straight face, kind of like Airplane or whatever, but like it's them
Right.
the reporter going like giving little chuckles and shit. That to me is hilarious. And maybe for the wrong reasons, but like that stuff got to me.
Yeah. The yes, the reporters were great. The reporter, not the one who's at the North Pole, but the one who keeps breaking in with breaking news,
Hmm.
is so well informed, like way more well informed than you would expect, because he knows everything immediately. He's the fact that he's reporting on two children who went missing earlier that afternoon, like, and then also like immediately being like, and then this is what's going on with the possible nuclear strikes and whatever, like it's he keeps breaking in with like just this, so like he's so well informed,
Hmm.
and it's very funny. It made me laugh every time he broke in because it all felt like it felt like he was reporting for a movie, which is what he was doing,
Hmm.
but it completely felt like exposition reporting and not like actual news reporting, which made me very happy.
Right.
um but as far as the North Pole goes, some other elements that okay, so um, the thing that there's one part that touches me, like honestly, completely, my it's probably my favorite part of this whole movie,
Hmm.
uh, which is when the robot guy, what I forget what his name is, because and I keep forgetting his name because when I was watching with subtitles, whoever was doing the subtitles didn't understand what the name was, so they put inaudible every time they said it, and and I'm like, and to me it was pretty clear, but it made me laugh because it just said inaudible every time they said the. I'm looking it up right now, but anyway, when he goes into the uh, toy shop and then just like immediately becomes a toy and is no longer interested in following the orders of the Martians or
Hmm.
destroying anything, and just immediately he gets in there and he's like, this is my place. um I find that so heartwarming that
Yeah.
that he steps in there and immediately becomes a toy. uh it's Torg. His name's Torg.
Torque.
I just looked up. I would die for Torg. Torg. Torg just really touched my heart. That
Yeah.
and the fact that when he steps in, immediately one of the Martians is like, "Oh no, he's a toy now." Like he
Yeah.
hadn't even done anything. He was just standing there. He's like, "No, he's a toy. It's we've lost him. I'm sorry. We can move on because he's a toy
Hmm.
now." I love that. And then the other thing about the North Pole is because let's talk about the polar bear.
Oh
Uh,
boy. Oh man. Oh man. And this is where we go from like these are all things we like to like okay now we're getting into the bad stuff like
yeah,
and the like of course bad so bad it's good stuff but like oh
right.
boy, oh boy.
Uh, I love it because not only is it just a man in a suit or a person in a suit, some person in a suit. The suit did very whoever made the suit did very little to make it a convincing bear, number one, and whoever was in the suit did like just was did very little to be to convince me that it was a bear at all. And when you're putting on that suit, you're like, no one's gonna buy this. I guess I'm just a guy in a suit. But that do you remember when you first saw how you felt, or
I
you
that's the
how
thing. I'm
did you
trying to
feel this
like
time?
access those memories because like it does not look like a polar bear, but it's still frightening. Like
Yeah.
and I guess if that's like the vibe they're going for is like, the scary monster and like make it look whatever it is, make it look scary nonetheless. I think it's scary not because it's this animal, but it's because the
Mhm.
design is so haggard that like everything just like it's scary because it's badly designed, not because it is a
Yeah.
polar bear attacking them
Right.
or coming at them or whatever. Like, I think if you had a realistic CG polar bear, it would not be as scary because I don't think
Right.
it's a circumstance; it's the design that makes it scary.
I
And then
agree.
after you get past the like, oh, 5 seconds later, it's like, oh god, what is that? Like you
Yeah.
get to the laughter, like it's almost like that you're processing the fear and then the laughter. But yeah, like I remember being frightened by it when I watched it this morning. So like I remember that experience. So I assume third grade me was probably a little more scared, or just kind of confused. Because this isn't a hard to follow film, but I feel like when there are design elements that are so bad, it's like you have to kind of readjust and be like, wait, is this what I'm supposed to be watching?
Yeah.
Which is kind of like that in this.
I find things like that. It's always very interesting when movies use a person in a suit to be something scary, because I think that there's almost a subconscious thing, at least for me, where um, the thing to me, something more that's scarier than a polar bear chasing after children is a person in a polar bear suit chasing after children.
Yeah, I mean, it's what makes the original like King Kong and Godzilla so scary because these
Yeah,
are people or they're puppets. But like, I think for King Kong, it's a mix of both. Like a lot of the expressions are
yeah,
actual human expressions. So like, there's something almost a little scarier about it.
yeah.
And I agree. Like it's, yeah, it's not like CGI coming at you. It's like an actual
Right.
guy in a costume. Like,
It's a
and I
guy in a
put
costume
myself
who
in.
has guy who has he has guy thoughts, and
Yeah,
he's
like
gonna
I
and if
but
you've gone in a cave, he's gonna figure out how to get in that cave.
right, and I
Like
also think of myself as like someone who like works near Times Square and just the people in those costumes when they come at you and they like chase you for a picture and an autograph, like that's scary. And now imagine you're on set in like this North Pole set, which I'm sure is not convincing that it's the North Pole, but like you're in your mindset as an actor of like this is the vibe and like it's a cold, snowy night and there's this polar bear. I think it would be even more frightening. Yeah, I would have been frightened if I was on set.
um, let's move on to the Martians themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
The ones doing the conquering for sure. Or
the
no, the
ones
ones
that
that
are
Santa
being
Claus
conquered.
conquers. Yeah.
Well, okay. Let's address that first, is because the title of this movie, "Santa Claus Conquers the Martians," is not really accurate. It's more
No. They
Santa Claus
conquer him.
conquers a Martian, maybe
Right.
sort of.
Where
uh,
they like hold him captive, right? Like they get him and then
they get
he
him, but
conquers
like
them and
most of
they
them
give
are
him
friendly.
back. Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Like the way this title is set up to be like conquers the Martians, you almost feel like it's gonna be like this big battle thing, and there's Santa Claus is gonna have to defeat them to rescue his day. And at the end of the day, it's just a stern talking to. Like it's
right.
very easy, simple. Like here's da 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 da, and then like oh well, we can have our own Santa then. You can go back to Earth, and it's like oh. That's it. Like you conquering a Martian, like that's it. And I think that's also something where like the selling point, like they could make a movie like this where like Santa Claus has a full-on war with aliens. Like, get the David Harbour from Violent Night to like take on all these aliens.
Oh,
I'd
that
love to
would
see
be
it.
awesome.
James Cameron, when
Yeah.
you're done making 12,000 alien Avatar movies, make a movie where Santa Claus fights aliens. I'd love to see it with some cool
Or
tech.
put Santa Claus in one of the Avatar movies. Let's
Yeah, I
do
mean
it.
they got to celebrate Christmas, right? Or some holiday. You know, like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be Santa Claus, but it can be a guy who drops off presents
Well, I
every
mean,
Navi Christmas. I don't know.
so far humans coming to Pandora is a thing. So, like,
Mm.
maybe the last line of offense for the humans is going to be Santa and his reindeer.
Yeah.
Um,
Imagine
the
I just pictured Santa riding in a sleigh with banshees instead of reindeer, just like pulling him like. "Ah!" I love it. Love it.
yes. Okay, so the let's talk about the design of the of
Let's
these
do it. Let's.
Martians, because it's so wild. Because it seems to, because they at least address at one point, the kid asks, "What's that on your head?" And he says, "That's my antenna." Um, does not address the helmet or whatever else is sticking off of the helmet,
Right.
almost to make it seem like that is part of their anatomy, because we never see them without it. They go to sleep in it. Like, it feels like that's part of their anatomy, but it's very clearly a helmet with
Yeah.
things glued to it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I brought up earlier with like Star Trek. It's like when you're at this point in cinema history and you have such a limited budget, even if your budget's great, you still have very limited resources to do anything. Like you can use animation to do whatever you want, but if you don't have
Right.
animation, you really have to get creative. And at that point, do you go more minimalist and go more for the sci-fi concepts, kind of like a Star Trek, and you go for really impressive makeup and like a very like clean, slick, like this is our future? Or do you go the complete opposite way, which is this, and just like make everything look schlocky because you want to still make it feel otherworldly, but you just do not have the means to? So then they end up just looking like people like dressing up for Halloween. And I think that's where it
Right.
comes from. Like, if you were to make this nowadays, you could probably make it more convincing because you would have a budget. But back then they didn't have that. So it all just looks pretty atrocious. And I hate to keep comparing it to it, but like you see Avatar and how seamless those bodies look and those Na'vi, and now you look at these people and there's the green paint on them. It looks terrible.
Well, and and you're right. Like that's kind of you're dealing with a low budget. You're gonna kind of lean into it. But
Hmm.
honestly, um, if they had just like painted everyone green and maybe like bleached their hair or something, it would have looked far more realistic. I would have much more believed that that was a Martian
Right.
compared to what they gave us. So like they definitely leaned into this is the movie we're making, but it was definitely a detriment to the believability of those
Right.
creatures. Let me ask you something, Dill. You are a bit younger than me, and so I am curious if you know who the Great Gazoo is
I do not.
from the Flintstones.
No, unfortunately.
Pull up a picture of the Great Gazoo. The Great Gazoo premiered on the Flintstones in 1965.
Oh.
The Martians in Santa Claus Conquers the Martian predate the Great Gazoo.
Oh,
And it
interesting.
looks
Okay.
so much like it feels like the Great Gazoo took like the producer Harvey Korman took the uh took
The
inspiration
design.
from
Yeah.
this because it looks so much like now Marvin the Martian did predate all of them, but he doesn't it's not so close as the Great Gazoo is that it makes me I go,
Yeah.
gosh,
Well,
that
also the
feels like
years
there's a
being so close indeed
yeah,
too, but that was my point. Like animation, it looks so much better, The Great Gazoo,
yeah,
than these. Like it's because animation you can do so much, and like that's my point though. Is like Star Trek is still being able to do it with I don't even want to say low budget because it was a big budget at the time, but like they're using their resources well at the same time. Like there's no really excuse to make things look as bad as they do here. Um,
right.
I mean, obviously, the excuse is we get this great cinema classic
Yeah,
because of it, but it's also like, oh god, it looks like Halloween costumes. It's not even SNL. Like SNL would make it look more convincing than this.
right. Um so this is I hesitate to bring it up because it is my frame wreck moment of the movie, but we're gonna have the
Okay,
train wreck
yeah.
moment of the movie.
I
We're
mean,
gonna have to
they're
just
gonna
talk
have
about it now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um the scene where they go to visit oh god damn it. I just
Oh,
forgot
is it the
what he's
ancient one?
the ancient one, the
Because that is
Chochim.
my spoiler alert, my frame wreck moment and my worst actor. So like we can talk about it all right now because
Yeah,
that moment in the midst of a movie that's already bonkers, you have this moment that is just like the one guy and it's all one guy. Like the other people in the scene aren't really adding. It's all him and his performance that makes this
right.
as crazy it is. But Matt, you speak about it because you thought of it. But I mean, this is a great time to talk about it because this is the peak of like if you want to get an idea for why Santa Claus Conquers the Martians is as like beloved for the wrong reasons. It's this scene right here.
Yeah, so they go visit Chochim, which is the it's a Yiddish word meaning sage, is what
Mm.
I found out.
Also, if you read it on paper, it looks like choke him. But yeah,
Yeah, um,
which somebody on
and
this probably wanted to do.
and to get advice from him, and the dialogue that he has to do is so bad. I actually feel bad for the actor because he
Mm,
has to drop so much exposition. Basically, every piece of history that we have about the Martians in this movie comes from him in this scene. He has
mhm.
to talk about, well, he's like, "What time of year is it?" And they were like, "It's the middle of September or whatever he said." And he's like, "No, no, on Earth," as though uh that's just as though anybody would think like it's if you asked me what is today, I would tell you the date and you'd be like, no, on Venus. And I'd be like, why on earth would I tell you the day it is on Venus?
If it's
But
even any different, really. Obviously,
yeah,
it probably would be because of the time-space continuum, but I don't have the
right.
brain cells right now to think about it. But yeah, no, it's ridiculous, and that's just one month.
Yeah, and then and he's like, ah, yes, that's when, and then he's like, yeah, that's when Christmas is and stuff. And then the next part is about he has to tell them about he tells them, these people who definitely already know because they all have children, about how we don't have children on Mars. They are all they are all given put in a accelerator and given the minds of adults. And which does not add to this movie at all. I
No.
don't understand why why that's part of it. It doesn't it it, it might explain uh why the Martian children are acting like so apathetic all the time, like why they don't act like children, but that just could just be down to their Martians. Like we don't need
Mhm.
an explanation for that because they're from a different planet. They could that just be how they act like that.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just that makes me laugh every single time when it's like when he explains that they are bodies of children with brains of adults. Um,
Mhm.
and Yeah, and then he's basically like, "Yeah, you have to get Santa." How do you tell me? You tell me about your feelings on this scene.
Well, yeah, it's like you said, it's the dialogue, but it's then also just like the delivery of it too. Because like you're the ancient one, you're like the wise, noble one, but he like takes it to this extreme where like he very clearly knows he's trying to be this like otherworldly creature, but in a movie about Martians and Mars and stuff, to be then trying to outdo that, like it already exists as is as this like creepy mystical thing. Like you don't need to go the extra mile for it, but he does. No, I just get a kick out of it. Like I don't have any very specifics to add that you haven't, but like it's just
Right.
such a good, just so enjoyable because like the whole time I'm just like, what is going on? Yeah, again, like an actor I've never seen in anything else, and I'll bring up
Yeah.
his name when we talk about our worst actor, but yeah, like, eugh.
It actually that performance reminds me of that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail,
Hmm.
with like the troll guy by the bridge. Like that's the same energy and that's basically the same performance, but the difference is Monty Python is a like is supposed to be over the top, and that gosh
Yeah, this is
that
purely there
performance
for an
was something else.
exposition dump. Like he could have just
Yeah,
been there and said it, and just the nature of him being the ancient one, the way he's dressed, the way he looks, would have been enough. But now he has to like add to it to make it more whimsical, and that's where it kind of goes off the rails. But again, I appreciate it because I love it as a bad movie. So yeah.
right, right. So yeah, that part. Oh my god. Uh, and this is basically uh when we kind of get introduced to who Voldar is going to be in this movie, the
Hmm.
guy with the mustache, which is basically um, a I don't want to get political. It's basically a Gen Xer. How Gen X feels about millennials, or
Hmm.
really any generation below them. They're all weak. Well, all of our children they're getting weak and
Right.
you're all marshmallows and that whole thing. Like that's who he becomes. It really it's the uncle none of us want to talk to at Thanksgiving is
Right.
who Voldar is.
Yes.
Um, so we're introduced to him, and everybody else, and they decide that they need to go to Earth to get Santa, um, I- for reasons. I know it's for the kids to try to make them have like maybe to make them feel like they're kids, but
Right. But then
that
again,
doesn't
like
seem
they
to
spent
be
so much time trying to emphasize the fact that there weren't kids, that they were
right.
special Martian, children, adult hybrids. That it's like, because it can be such a straightforward premise. Like you want to get Santa so he can bring some Christmas cheer to Mars, but then it becomes so much more convoluted because of that.
Right. Yeah, it exactly. Um, and the so when they're going to on their way to Earth, when they get to Earth, um, another this is another candidate for train wreck moment of the movie, which was when they get to Earth and they're all looking and they're looking and they're all like, no, I have Santa here, and both of them have Santas in their viewfinders, and he's like, no, he's not. This guy, one of the guys, like he's on the corner in front of a building, and it shows a Santa ringing a bell on a on a street next to a building, and he said, no, he's not. He's in front of a building ringing a bell, and it cuts to another Santa who is doing the exact same thing, standing in an exact like an identical location. It, it's like perhaps they could have used two Santas who were not the exact same in the exact same position, uh,
Are you sure it
doing the
wasn't the
exact same
exact
thing.
same actor too, or no? Was it different?
I mean, I don't think it was definitely a different location. They weren't in the exact same
Oh,
position
okay.
or in the exact same location. They were both on a street corner in front of a building, ringing a bell.
Okay.
Like it was
Yeah.
the same situation.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I love that. But on that trip, we also really get to know Drapo,
Hmm.
who I feel like is the only actor in this movie who truly like understands what movie he's in.
Hmm.
Like he gets what's going on, and he's funny. He's legitimately a funny character. How did
Yeah.
you feel about Drapo?
No, I think it's the thing you said earlier. It's like the self-aware. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate the Santa Claus performance for being just like your straightforward Santa Claus and understanding that side of the assignment of just being want to be a great Santa Claus. But then you also have this other performance where it's like, no, I understand the tone of the piece, which is
Hmm.
also kind of fun, but also in a way makes it lesser of a performance because it's a little too self-aware. Like we like to talk about on the
Right.
show how much we like it when they're not self-aware because that would sort of
Right.
make it more entertaining. So I feel like the more in on the joke you are, maybe then you start to stick out more like a sore thumb than you are a genuinely good performance. But I agree, like he knows what movie he's in,
Right.
and that's already a big plus that some others don't.
Yes, I agree. And he definitely knows the movies, and his character, it's funny, and I love how in the third act of this movie, um, he dresses up as Santa, and then for some reason, no one else in the movie can see the difference between this Martian dressed up as Santa and the actual Santa.
Yeah.
Uh, I love that they're all like right next, like the Martians are like right with him, and they're just like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is clearly Santa Claus.
Yeah, and then
Uh,
that's just it, and then that ends because it's like, all right, great, he can be our Santa, bye Santa, and that's how it ends. Like
yeah,
again, like it doesn't end with any fanfare. It's just like that's it,
yeah,
like that's how it ends basically.
yeah. But yeah, I love that that aspect that not only do they just does he just become their Santa Claus, but that like before that no one can tell the difference. Like no
Hmm.
no one can tell he's not Santa. Like they actually take him captive because they think he's Santa, uh, which is very interesting because I feel like if again this is another thing, like I feel like if we had an alien trapped, like if I had an alien trapped in my closet or I had an alien staying in my house and someone put the alien's clothes on, I would never think,
Hmm.
well, then now I guess that's the alien.
Right.
Because
Well,
no, that's clearly a human wearing alien clothes.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, even thematically, like as a story device, it's not really the best way to go. Like we had a whole trilogy of movies devoted to a man who just puts on the suit and is like, "I guess I'm Santa now." But then everyone else is like, no, you're not. That's not how you just become Santa. And it's
Right.
all about how Tim Allen, if I haven't alluded to what trilogy I'm talking about, like goes through the growth of understanding what Santa is. It's not just
Right.
what you're wearing. It's how you embody the spirit of Christmas, the spirit of Santa. It's the whole argument of like, is this a Christmas movie because it has Santa in it, or is it a Christmas movie because it has the Christmas spirit in it? It's the same thing here. It's like, are you Santa because you put on the suit, or is it because you embody the spirit? And I would have loved to see a little bit more of the character and like what it means to him to be Santa in terms of like the feelings he gives, the humanity behind him, not just, oh, he puts on this clothes and can like make
Yeah.
toys. Like that's not
Right.
it. And that's why if we were to remake this, which I don't think it needs to be, but like this is a very, and this is my plus for the film, is it's a generally like fine concept. It's a very good concept. It's some things don't make sense, but it's a very straightforward concept. Alien planet wants Santa for themselves, wants a version of it so they can feel whole and feel included in a way. They capture Santa, but then they find out that they can find their own Santa. They have their own Santa. It's kind of like the Arthur Christmas thing. It's like,
Right.
no, he was there all along. He wasn't your guy that you appointed as Santa, but he's the one who's been like showing what it means to be Santa behind the scenes. Like you can do this in an interesting way that has some thematic resonance. It's just this film doesn't really take that route. It's just more like, oh, he looks like Santa. All right, you can go home. Like, so I was almost wishing there was a little bit more of a character arc in like what Santa Claus means beyond the outfit. But again, I don't expect a movie like this to be that profound. So,
Right.
but I do think also the special effects of like sci-fi could be really cool nowadays if they were to go that route with a movie
Right.
like this. Maybe make it a full-on action picture. Where Santa has to actually battle the Martians, and then like there's another Martian who is on the good side and shows that humanity, that warmth, and I could see a case being made to remake this. Maybe.
I like that you mentioned remaking it, only because this is the third episode in a row where we've decided that we need to remake a thing, because
Right.
we came up with a way to remake Shakma. We wanted to make a sequel to Mac and Me, and then now we're talking about remaking this movie.
Right. Yeah.
We need
I
to
think
start a
maybe-
remake bad movies company.
Yeah, once we get like monetized on this channel, once we get like a Patreon going or whatever, and we get some money, and I get like time, maybe like we turn Framewreck from like discussing bad movies to like remaking bad movies, and making them good again, or pitching them in a way like we kind
Yeah.
of like sit down and make the scripts, maybe storyboard it out, and maybe do like a 5-minute short of like a teaser of what it could be like. That maybe like in 2028, that's like the goal of what Framewreck is at that point. It's like a full on like Framewreck Studios. And it's like us
I love it.
remaking these movies in a live action modern setting, and we'll get like some C-list actors to come help us out, like old Disney Channel has-beens, like that we can afford, rather than like
Mhm.
the heavy hitters. Even though realistically, like you would have obviously like your Santa would be pretty top notch here. I'm
Right.
trying to think of an actor off the top of my head. I can't really.
John Goodman is who.
There you
we
go,
have.
John Goodman, perfect casting. I love it. And then Dropo could be.
That's maybe Jamie Kennedy has a comeback.
I like that. I was thinking like Martin Freeman, but I like Jamie Kennedy.
Martin Freeman's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. And then the ancient one, we could have like a Ben Kingsley or something. Like that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
So like 2028 Framewreck Studios will be remaking Santa Claus Conquers the Martians with
Nick Offerman as Voldar.
Oh, I like that
as
too.
the crotchety. Yeah.
I love him.
All these kids these days. That's who. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So, I love that the height of futurism and sci-fi, and the thought of what an advanced society or civilization is back then, in not just in movies but also in literature, was that you no longer need real food, you take pills for food.
Right.
I love that. And then but I also, not just that, I love that Dropo it illustrated how you can still like taste and enjoy the pills as a thing.
It's like
Because when
the Willy Wonka gum. Yeah.
when he's trying to fatten up, which I think that scene's legitimately funny, when he's trying to fatten up and he takes 4 pills, and then he goes over and he's like, huh, that didn't work. Like,
Because again, a pill is something that's very easy to create in 1964 or whatever, like
right.
when this came out. Like that's something you can actually do, and that's a funny little sci-fi gag. The idea that you had these
Yeah.
little pills for food. It's the same thing with Willy Wonka. She's chewing the gum, like, and they had the effect to make her big and stuff, and
Right.
blue and round. But like, that's the thing. It's like when it tries to just be like use its budget to its advantage, it's good. But when it tries to be larger than life, and I think it's time now to talk about the robots or the cardboard boxes that are painted silver that are supposed to be some sort of robot, in
Right.
this movie as well. Because like again, when the bigger they try to go with this, the more it fails because they just do not have the means to. They look so
Right.
bad. What are your thoughts on those creations, whatever you want to call them?
The yeah, I agree. It makes the movie more. Those things make the movie more entertaining to me. As like, again, this comes back to what we're talking about,
Yeah.
where they have to be doing. They like you have to be earnest with it, and
Mhm.
they were earnest. They were like, "This is
Mhm.
what we have. This is how we're doing
Right.
it.
I was
This
just
is."
about to say, I was gonna say, was this a point in the marketing to actually do it? And yep, he's right on the poster. Like they
Yeah.
are trying their best to get people to see it by showing them exactly what they did not have in terms of budget.
But again,
I
as
mean,
I
that's
mentioned
bold.
before, I die for Torque. So it's not.
Right.
It's not. So he is an endearing character, but um, it's the earnestness is important, and so when I watch it, it makes me so happy to see things like just boxes taped together
Right.
for a robot and a man in a costume and stuff like
Hmm.
that, because I know that they are trying to they're doing their best to convey it, and they're failing so miserably
Right.
for my entertainment here in the year of our Lord 2022.
Right.
So
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Because I knew what you thought of him as like the character. You got like
yeah.
emotional, like the toy thing, but I wasn't sure how you thought about the design. But I agree. Like
Oh,
that's the
the
charm of
design
it.
is
Yeah.
bad, but it
Yeah.
is charming.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the Martians themselves too. Yeah. Like the
Yeah.
design is not there.
Oh
But
yeah, it's the design's
but like
definitely
like
bad.
that's
Yeah.
the image I think of when I think of this movie is Torque. It's like that has never left my brain. When I was young, like that's the thing when in third grade that I remember most about this movie is that I was like, this is clearly the first bad movie I ever watched. So I was like, this is weird. Like I just didn't know what I was watching because I rarely watch movies like that. And then also I remember the what I called garbage can robot.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a
Well,
garbage can, it's more cardboard box. But
and they were making good robots back then.
right, yeah.
It's not like they didn't have the technology. I mean, Lost in Space, when did that? Let me look it up.
Mhm.
Lost in
Or
Space,
do
the
what they did
TV.
with Wizard of Oz with the Tin Man. Like you don't need a bulking thing. Like just
Exactly.
paint it gray. I mean, you're already doing green for the Martians. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay,
Um,
1965 is so a year the next year after this was Lost in Space, and you have one of the most iconic robots ever in Lost in Space. You have
right.
things like Metropolis and Forbidden Planet, like that
Hmm.
have good uh
Yeah.
robots in them
Well,
that
Forbidden
aren't
Planet is the quintessential sci-fi in the fact that like everything looks so otherworldly in that movie, or not
yeah.
Forbidden Planet. I'm thinking of Fantastic Planet, but either way,
Fantastic
that
Planet.
too.
Yes,
Yeah,
that too.
Fantastic Planet is the one, the animated one, where it just looks so otherworldly that I'm like, yeah, like there's sci-fi is so interesting in this era because like the budget is the most creative part. Like you have to make your budget work to like it within your means, and that's why I think sci-fi from this era is the most fascinating as well. Like because
Yeah.
nowadays it's like you can really do whatever the fuck you want. You really can.
Right.
Like it may take 12 years, as we've seen with Avatar too. Again, bringing it back, but like it could take 12 years to get it, but like if you want to make whatever you want to make, you can make it. And if it
Mhm.
has to be animated, you can make it that way. Strange World has a lot of weird, crazy visuals going on. Like this is though, like you look at movies like Forbidden Planet, Fantastic Planet, stuff like Star Trek, and then this, and it's like just such a wide spectrum of the same era, but just seeing how different budgets are used in different ways to create other worlds. And like,
Mhm.
when are we aware of like, oh, this is a cardboard box, or oh, wow, that's an alien, or that's a robot. And
Right.
I just think that's so fascinating, and that's why sci-fi is such a fascinating genre. And that's why looking at bad movies that are sci-fi is all the more fun.
Right. Well, and we learned things from you know eh, there was a boom in the 90s, and earlier than that, 60s and 70s also had booms of independent filmmaking, but
Hmm.
especially in the 90s there was a boom of independent filmmaking, And the idea was, and you got this from Robert Rodriguez, like work with what you have. Robert Rodriguez had a turtle and a guitar, and he made El Mariachi. Like
Yeah.
that's all he had, and that's all that you needed. Like so,
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of lessons learned from this area where just because you had the ability to make a movie, you didn't have to try to go as big as possible. You should just work with what you have. And I think I think that movies like this made films in general better going forward, not only because we have Mrs. Claus and the Great Gazoo, but also like because there are a lot of lessons learned from movies like this, which is great.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, let's get into our let's get into our
superlatives, because it could stem other conversations. But
Yeah.
I already talked about my worst actor and my Framewreck moment, so we could talk about that now, or Trainwreck moment. And I gotta find his name again. What is it? Give me a quick sec. Why can I not find his name in this cast list? Carl Don. Very simple name, Carl Don. Pronounce it again. Kokum, is that it?
Chochum.
Chochum. I kind of made a mix of.
My understanding is they pronounced it wrong in the movie, but that's how it's pronounced in the movie. Like it's pronounced differently in Yiddish, but that's how they pronounce it.
It's like Han Solo, how it's pronounced like 30 different ways. In the movie, like Han. The way Lando says it versus the way Leia says it in Empire. That's my firm rec moment and my worst actor.
My Trainwreck moment is the same, obviously, as I mentioned that whole scene. My worst actor is just all of the kids, and it's not really their fault, but and they weren't terrible, but just like they luckily they were beside John Call, who is my actor who elevated material.
Yeah, I'm right there with
for
you.
most of that. As Santa, as I mentioned before, he felt like a classic Coca-Cola Santa Claus. He's so charming. I expected here's the thing. I expected to find out that he was a career Santa when I looked into him. I was like, I'm going to look into him, see what else he's played Santa in. This is the only time he's ever played the character.
Wow. I mean, I could see why, I guess, because like you'll get into the legacy about how like this movie did. And also he died pretty shortly after. I'm just looking now. But that is surprising. He honestly didn't have much of a career at all. Like his IMDb photo is him in this movie. No, it's kind of sad.
It is, but he's so good. Like he felt so iconic, and I feel like a lot of what we base. I mean, he was probably based on probably the Coca-Cola Santa, which is really what we base Santas on, but I feel like a big part of how we present Santa in these in movies and TV and media today. I feel like some of it has to be taken from him, or at least inspired the same way that this Santa was inspired, because he was so good.
Yeah.
I
was just reading my quote over again, being like, how? Sorry. I was just looking at my notes. I was like, how in the world? Do you want to get into our quote now, or wait?
Yeah, go ahead. You have a quote.
I'm reading it. I'm like, wow. So again, we love him, but John Call, just because he's a great actor, doesn't mean all his lines are great. So here's if after he's asked if he wants to use the rocket sleigh, this is what he responds with: "No siree. We're going out the good old-fashioned way. Prancer and Dancer and Donder." If I listened to it 3 times, he said Donder, not Donner. Donder and Blitzen and Vixen and Nixon. Oh, consarnate. I get those names mixed up, but the kids know their names. So he's mispronouncing reindeers' names, which, like, it's a funny gag. Santa doesn't know the name of his reindeer, but also it's like, you have one job. You make toys all year, and then you fly. And like you only have 7 reindeer or 9 reindeer,
right.
and there's a song anyway. But like it's so telling of the times that like there's a joke where they're like, and Nixon, and oh no, oh I got the names wrong, like just throwing Nixon in there. Like I'm thinking like nowadays if you had named like threw some political figure's name into like a joke like that and nonchalantly brushed it off like, oh I just screwed up, like that would have people rioting. And I'm just thinking like it's just such a different time. It's so interesting. But that line is just always so funny because it's like, what, like Santa's like Nixon, it's like
Yeah,
anyway, so silly.
it is. I agree. It's not a good line. But his delivery of it, again, I think that's just part of his charm. I don't think he
Mm,
could deliver uh any of this poorly. But
mm.
yes, that is bad. A bad line.
What's your
I
bad line, Doug?
Here's the thing. Mine is kind of a. I didn't know that this was going to be your frame wreck moment, so it kind of feels like a cheat at this point.
No, it's
But
fine.
mine is just everything Chochum said, like just
Right,
basically
and
his
that's fair
whole.
because it is. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
answer. Yeah.
it's his whole thing. I don't have one. I don't have it to read to you right now, but
Mm,
yeah, it's just basically everything Chochum said is my because it's my train wreck moment, but also it's just the worst dialogue. It's so bad.
right.
Um, the and which brings us to a matter of the scoring, sir.
Mm.
Um, I am going to uh I'm going to give it 4 baseballs out of 5. That was me pressing the button 4
I
times.
love it.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm giving it 4 polar bears out of 5, because the question mark has to be there. But yeah, we're on lockstep, and again on this rating system, for those watching for the first time, our rating is like on the bad, so bad it's good scale. Like if it's a bad movie that's not good, and it's just flat out bad, it's getting like 0 stars. If it's a good movie that's just genuinely good and not bad, it gets 0 stars. These are like how good because they're bad are they? So 4
Right.
out of 5 is both our scores. So we're 8 out of 10 if you add them up.
Which yes, exactly. And if that brings us to Mount Trashmore, which I don't think this goes on it, but I do think this is the closest we've come to having something unseat something that's currently on it. What do we currently have on Mount
All right,
Trashmore?
so we have like the 4. It's Plan 9 from
Yeah.
Outer Space, Troll 2, The Room, and Birdemic. So like
Yeah, see, it doesn't quite reach that, but it is the closest I think that we have come to getting
I
something back up there since then.
I don't know though. Like because I'm thinking like for classics, I always this was like the bad movie classic more
Right.
so than Plan 9 growing up. And like I
Okay.
get it, Plan 9 maybe it has to be on there, but like because I don't think Troll 2 or The Room are going anywhere. And like
Yeah, I
then the
don't think so.
question is Birdemic, is it just like I mean Birdemic's really, really bad too.
Yeah.
Like it's hard because like if there was a fifth slot, this is getting that fifth slot. Like
Yeah,
I think this is
exactly.
even more so than the Star Wars Holiday Special, which I also kind of love because it's so bad. But even then, like I guess this wouldn't be on because like I would genuinely watch this again before Plan 9 from Outer Space. Like I would like sit down and watch this because like I'm just like I can forgive a lot of it. Like a lot of it still has some charm, whereas the other ones are just like all really bad. But then again, The Room has charm for me, so I don't know.
Here's what I will say is
Mm,
that I would say that if it takes place of anything, to me, it would be Birdemic, but I don't think it needs to. And here's why. I think John Call as Santa is so charming that he elevates it above, like, to a point where it's almost the movie's not almost good,
right.
but it has a quality so good, and those
That
other
Birdemic
movies
another
don't
doesn't
have
have.
that.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I'll agree with that. I think it's just because it's more entertaining for me than Plan 9, but
Yeah,
like again, I don't have the same tie to Plan 9 that like you and so many other people do, and I know
right,
it's kind of like when some people are like Citizen Kane the best of all time. It's like, but you had to be there, and like you have to
right.
understand what it means for bad cinema. Like the Plan 9 really, it is the foundation. So I'll give it that. All right, so it's not gonna make Mount Trashmore, but it's close, and it's been the closest. So it's like
Mhm.
carving the fifth rock. It's trying. But it will not get there. So our Mount Trashmore remains Troll 2, The Room, Birdemic, and Plan 9 from Outer Space. But who knows? Someday we're gonna get there. We're gonna crack it. I know
We'll
we
see.
are.
Um,
There's gonna be a bad movie, even if it's not out there yet. It will be someday.
uh,
Maybe it'll be our
so
live action remake of this.
so consider so now that we're to the point of discussing what we are watching next week or next month,
Hmm.
I decided to go give us a little bit of a break because in February, I don't know if you want to talk about this yet, but in February we have a
Hmm.
pretty big
Yeah, February we're
tall
doing a
order.
series. Yes,
Yeah.
February in general is going to be crazy because it's the second anniversary of the channel, and I'm gonna go big. I'm going so big that I'm not gonna say what I'm doing yet. I haven't said it on the channel yet. I want to wait till I announce it. But we're going big for the 2-year anniversary to kick it off. So we're gonna do a series of 5 movies in February. We'll save that title for later. I will announce it when I drop the slate for what I will be doing in February, the big event I planned. But Matt, what is your kind of nice sip of tea before we chug the Gatorade in February?
Right. So because we have such a tall order for us on in February, the shortest month, um, I decided we're gonna go a little bit easier, something that probably a lot of people have already seen, something that um it will probably get a bit of interest if people stumble across it on YouTube.
Hmm.
And January is about the new year. It's about renewal. It's about revivification. Not unlike Catwoman after she is killed and revived by
Ah,
cats. We're gonna
yeah,
watch the Halle Berry
yeah.
Catwoman.
That'll be very, very
Yeah.
fun. Way to kick off the new year. Matt, any other words of wisdom or parting words? Happy holidays. I mean, this was a fun episode.
Yeah.
Again, great to talk about a Christmas classic that we've both seen, and it's cool to know that Kevin Bacon has also seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting, and I'm glad, and I love that we got to talk about this movie and that I got to watch it like 3 or 4 times this year, because like I said, I watch them a lot, when we're gonna be doing these, and that, you know, I'm I'm grateful for, the opportunity you've given me on this channel, Dill, and, Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you too, Matt. You can find Matt at all the things listed down below for him, and you can find me at all the things listed down below for me. As I said, there's something big coming in February, and I'm gonna tease it. I'm gonna keep teasing it, and it's gonna involve a lot of hands, a lot of help, and a lot of eyes. So people get ready, mark your calendars. Just take all of February off because it's gonna be one of those days. Some big fun things are happening. But yeah, that's it for us. We'll see you next time. Happy holidays. We'll see you with Catwoman next.
What a story, Mark.